He's one of the most dynamic sports media personalities, NFL champion turned podcaster. Telling you, you're going to love this brother. He's been talking since grade school, right? Just spitting it right out. Talking business with former Pittsburgh Steelers legend, Ryan Clark. You're in the Enterprise Zone at the Nasdaq. Hello, everyone. It's Jabari Young, senior writer at Forbes, and you are in the Enterprise Zone at the Nasdaq MarketSite. And I am joined by Ryan Clark, ESPN analyst, former NFL champion, podcast host of the Pivot podcast, right?
Yes,
entrepreneur,
sir.
Man. That's what you are.
Yeah, I am. Also, too, though, you're never a former champion.
Never always a champion.
Yeah, once you get it, man,
Yeah.
it's yours.
Should I do this all over again?
No, don't do it all over again, man. I like it, man. I like that part of the conversation.
Former Pro Bowler.
That I was. Nah, I'm definitely not that no more. I pulled my hamstring last week trying to play out there with my kid.
Oh, man. Are you all right? Because I saw you limping in here. That's what that was.
I just got bad feet.
Oh, man. Come on.
Yeah.
First time at the Nasdaq, man. I can't believe
Now,
it.
this is really cool, man. I was lost. Obviously, the directions don't bring you right here, but we figured it out.
Secret society.
Yeah, we figured it out. All you ask is trust.
Yeah, that's it, man. That's it, man. So listen, we're here. You got to give me a stock, right? What is something that's worked well for Ryan Clark, or something you may be looking to buy?
Well, for me, it's not necessarily the stocks that I'm into as just to how I manage the portfolio, right? So I was an undrafted free agent. So when you come into it the way I do, you almost just want to put your money underneath your mattress.
That's right.
Right, and so when I started to invest, I was like, hey, look, I don't care how much money I make, but I don't want to lose any. And then as you continue into your career, you get to your second and your third contract, now when they're bringing you different investments, when they're talking about different stocks, now you can look at the risk in which you are investing and say, okay, this sounds good to me or this doesn't. So I'm definitely more aggressive as I am now, but for me, I want everything to be spread out in a way to where I'm not oversaturated in any one stock or any one investment type.
Yeah. So what one investment maybe has worked for you? Has it been real estate?
So real estate was good, but it also, that changes and fluctuates so much. We started with real estate in Virginia, and we had rental properties there because that was the first place I played when I was in Washington. And with having those rental properties, we were able to not only pay for the rental properties that we had already purchased, we were able to buy more. And in buying more, we were saying, okay, we got to a point then when sort of the tide turned, right, and the market turned, we sold there. And so now what we're working on is I've invested in training facilities.
Okay.
Right, so not only leasing in the training facility based on the land that we own, but also now multiplying that by investing in travel baseball, right? Also doing the actual training, high school.
So it's a cross sports training.
It's a cross sports training, but that's not where you make your money. You make your money hosting tournaments.
Yeah.
Right. So the land is actually more important than what you provide for your clients. And so that's been something that's worked extremely well for us as well.
Nice. Listen, you know, you walk into a fifth grade class who they may not be familiar with your playing days, right? Because they're in the fifth grade, and they say, well, what do you do, Mr. Clark? What do you tell them today?
Right now, what I do is I'm a father and a husband. Like that's the first thing I am. I think right now it's an entrepreneur, but it's also my own business. Right? Whenever you present yourself, whether it's here, ESPN, on the Pivot podcast, there are people who are looking to see if they want to do business with you. And I always say every day is an interview.
That's right.
Right? Whether I'm sitting here and people are listening to me talk about the way I want to invest or the things I've invested in or something that has worked well for me, they're looking at me to see if there's some sort of synergy there. So you are the business. And I think the biggest thing right now is I'm an NFL analyst. And I say that if I had to nail it down to one thing, because that's where my bread is buttered. If podcasting goes away, if public speaking goes away, if we sell all our real estate, if I no longer own a training facility, like that's something I will be able to continue to do because that's where the source of my knowledge is, the source of my wisdom, the source of my experience.
Yeah, love that, man. Well, listen, 2025, a lot is going on, right? And we're not even in the back half of the year. Coming close, but what's been your soundtrack to 2025? What's been keeping Ryan Clark motivated and excited?
Wow. That wasn't a question I was expecting to be asked at the Nasdaq. Honestly, I put together this worship playlist at the beginning of the year, and I continue to add to it. And it has everything from John P. Key and Marvin Sapp and Kirk Franklin to
Marvin Sapp that didn't let people out of the doors, Marvin Sapp?
Hey, he said everybody need to bring $20 and all the people on the stage is gonna give $100. But yeah, that Marvin Sapp to Forrest Frank, who is like a newer gospel artist, and that's kind of what keeps me going. And I've also switched and tried to do something this year where I want to learn, right? So whether it's on the treadmill with an audio book, on the treadmill with a sermon, just continuing trying to feed my mind, because I've learned and felt that now that I'm out of football and that most of my time and effort is put into continuing to study it because it's different to have to communicate it, that was becoming the totals of my studies.
Yeah.
And I wanted to kind of broaden that as well.
Yeah. Well, listen, man, right fast before we dive into more business, but NFL training camps are here. I saw the Cowboys arriving in California, so that's my cue that we're back, right?
Yeah.
The training camps are back. What is Ryan Clark watching as training camp starts?
I mean, I think the first thing is, like, you're a Philly guy. All this Jalen Hurts hate.
Yeah.
You know, people continuing to ask more of him in order to prove himself as someone who's worthy of the position that he's earned. I think I want to see it. The Philadelphia Eagles, with a new offensive coordinator, can be as explosive offensively as they were last year. And for me, I'm a Pittsburgh Steeler. Mm-hmm. I want to see what Aaron Rodgers and Mike Tomlin, what that marriage can be like. And you mentioned the Cowboys, going to California, like George Pickens, CeeDee Lamb, Dak Prescott. I believe they can be the second best duo in all of sports from the wide receiver position and trio when you add the quarterback right behind the Cincinnati Bengals. But does that produce wins, or will it be 31 years that this team doesn't make it to the NFC Championship?
Yeah, you got the Eagles repeating?
Don't do that, right? so it's always hard. It's hard to repeat. It's hard to get back. I do believe that the Eagles are the best team
in the NFC.
Not in the NFC. I think the Eagles are still the best team in NFL.
Even though they lost some people on defense.
So you lose Slay. They move up Keely Ringo. I think the huge piece is going to be replacing C.J. Gardner-Johnson, who was actually recently on the Pivot podcast last week. Sidney Brown is a young safety that they have. But I just feel like Vic Fangio understands how to manipulate and maneuver those pieces so well defensively. And when you can rush up front the way they do, hell, the back end is sometimes the least of your worries.
Yeah, I play Madden all the time, man. My uncle's killing me with that front four.
First off, I don't play Madden because
it's too real.
I just because like in my brain, I'm like, okay, if I call this play, it's going to work. And the frustration level when it doesn't work, it's gonna make me throw my controller at the TV.
I've done that
and I'd rather keep my appliances.
I had the wrap tape around mine to keep the game going, man. Like, it's that level of frustration. But how about barring injuries? Like, what team do you probably need to look out for, right, that no one may be talking about?
Denver Broncos.
Denver Broncos.
The Denver Broncos. Obviously, they're in the AFC West with the Kansas City Chiefs, and so there's always going to be that giant. I always say Patrick Mahomes is the Michael Jordan of the NFL right now, but there's always going to be that giant there. Sean Payton, Bo Nix in this second year, that defense with Vance Joseph is going to be the best defense in all of football. They have a chance to make a ton of noise.
Yeah, I love that. One of the things, I want to ask you that question because you have this interesting mindset from a training camp perspective. Man, here you are, you get undrafted, and I get into your background a little bit later, but, go to the Giants, play for the Skins at that particular time, and then you become this Pittsburgh Steelers legend, and, you got cut at 1 year, and then you're making it. You're down at LSU, becoming a fundraiser guy, and you get a call because after you watch the footage of that championship game, it motivates you to get back, right? And then you get to Washington. But you're entering training camp at various times in your career with a whole different mindset. And then you get to Pittsburgh where you're the star. You can walk up in there now. Your job is safe, right? But what is a player's mindset right now when you're in training camp?
I think you set it up perfectly. It depends on where that player is in his career. Right? There are different points of your career where you approach things different ways. You set your goals differently. I remember early on in my career, I just wanted to make the team. Right? I wanted to get a consistent paycheck. I wanted that direct deposit to hit at the right time. And then it was become a starter. Then it's become a Pro Bowler. Then it's become a captain. Like, all of those things change year to year. And so I think your mindset should be the best you could possibly be every day. But that's what your mindset should be as well, right? That's what anybody here's mindset should be. And for me, it was, okay, how do I compete with the people in my room but also empower them? right? Because I wanted you and I needed you to be the best player you could possibly be while still wanting to be better than you, right? How do you do that? Be a good friend, be a good teammate, be a great leader, but also be the best player you can be. That's the focus every day. And my thing was not doing anything that didn't contribute to that goal.
Yeah. Do you find yourself in this mindset, turn off your phone? Like, do you block out everything when you're in training camp? Because I know when I'm digging into a story, I'm researching, like, I got to put my phone to the side, no social media, like, I got to dig in. Like, when you're in that mode, is you blocking everything out?
I would definitely be lying to you if I tell you I cut off social media.
So y'all do watch social media?
Yeah, like,
social media.
So every football player or athlete that tells you they don't read the news is lying.
Yeah, of course.
We all read it. We all have egos, right? And we like our egos to be stroked, and we're frustrated when people are saying negative things. Like, that is what it is. What I would do was I wouldn't bring a TV, right? So I would only bring books. And so, because I never wanted to get caught up in watching TV and being focused on something else, it was about books, it was about my playbooks, and just spending time with myself. And we always went in Pittsburgh, we went away. And I got married young, right? So I had 3 young kids. And so that time to me was almost like freedom. I was immersed into football and football only. And I think I learned the most about me individually during those times, continuing to stay consistent in whatever goals I'd set.
Yeah. I called a friend of mine, man, and he's a diehard Washington Commanders fan now.
Okay.
And I said, man, listen, describe Ryan Clark. Because my friend is a diehard fan. I mean, he saw you when you came there. We were talking about Sean Teller yesterday. I mean, a diehard fan.
Yeah.
I said, give me Ryan Clark from when he arrived at Washington under Joe Gibbs and when he left. He said he should have been a risk and longer, number one. That's what he said.
That'd have been
nice. He said, solid, steady difference maker, a hard hitter. But I love that solid and steady, those 2 words. You agree with that?
Well, yeah, I think the thing about
solid and steady. You agree with that?
I don't know if I tried to be. Yeah. I don't know if, like, solid and steady is something that you attribute to people who understand they can't make mistakes, right? When you're drafted in the first round, there's a lot longer leeway or road for you to make mistakes and be forgiven. There's a ton of grace that's given to you because they've invested into you. Nobody ever invested into me that way, so I didn't have opportunities to make mistakes or get do-overs, and so I played that way, right? I always wanted to be in the right position. I always tried to do the right thing. I always tried to make the people around me better. And then as you get older and you get more comfortable, now you can be a risk taker. Now you can be someone that anticipates and lives or does things a little bit differently. And so I think I was that in Washington. And those things never left me, but I did get the confidence to step outside of some of those confines and boxes later on in my career. And I think that's when you truly can reach a potential to where you are a difference maker on a different level.
Solid, steady, right, risk taker. Is Ryan Clark that way in business?
He is not a risk taker in business. I'm not. I remember a good friend of mine who was also a football player was investing in car dealerships. And he had another former teammate who was doing really well. And they continued to ask me. I went to meetings and I got on calls where they were trying to inform me how I could be a part of what they were starting was going to be a group of dealerships. I remember having a conversation with my wife and just telling her I'm not comfortable because I don't know enough. And even with all that they've told me, I not only can't give my opinion in order to change or move the needle, I said I also don't understand it enough. And I decided to not do that deal. And in not doing that deal, all the dealerships go belly up. They started to garner wages from some of my friends. And I said to myself, I'm comfortable with not making the money it could have made because I didn't lose that. And I think I've always been that way in investments. Like, my first few investments were annuities and different things that would pay me out a certain amount of money by the time I got to a certain age. It wasn't until much later where I told my financial advisor and allowed him to invest in different things that would help me in different ways and also have a risk of loss.
So how would you describe yourself as a businessman in 2025? Like, not a risk taker, but
I think it depends on the business, right? When I can control the business, I'm a risk taker because I believe in me. When it's things that I can't control, like still with stocks, it takes a ton of advice. It takes a ton of information. And I probably shouldn't say this on this show. Sometimes just a ton of trust in the people that I put in charge of my money, that they're doing the right things, because there are still things I don't understand, right? And I'm paying someone who has done this his entire life, for multiple athletes, multiple entertainers, multiple businessmen, to be able to make some of these decisions for me. So that is still part of it. But when it comes to me, I believe in me. I know the level of work I'm going to put into it. I know the level of excellence I continue to strive to deliver each and every day. And I'm willing to stand in front of anybody and say, these are the things I can deliver. So in that, I'll take a ton of risk because I have a ton of belief.
Yeah, most definitely. Well, look, man, one of the risks that you took and your business venture was the podcast, right?
Yeah.
The Pivot podcast. First, how's it doing, right? I'm seeing 1.2 million subscribers on YouTube. You're killing, right?
It's doing well, but so here's what I'll tell you. When you do invest in yourself and you are selling yourself for the most part, it does become personal, right? Because there's a level of worth you put on your investment, right? Like our investment was monetary, especially early, right? We decided that.
Well, how much did you invest to get it all
started? We decided, so when we initially started, we probably, the first 3 months of everything we did came out of our own pocket, because what you're paying is you're paying staff, you're paying crew, you're paying travel, you're paying lodging. And so all of those things we took care of we're 5 partners in the group. We all took care of our individual pieces. I can't really truly put the monetary value on how much that was.
If you have to give me a ballpark figure, over $1 million, under?
With all of us, under $500,000, in between 400,000 and 500,000. But the cool part about that was everybody had to be bought in, though.
That's right.
Right? Everybody had to say, we are willing to invest in this. And the other sort of faith you had to have was that it will come back at some point, because it wasn't here's a lump sum investment, and based on this lump sum investment, here is what we'll get. It was, oh wait, we don't have a sponsor yet, we don't have a partner, but we need this. Okay, that's more money. And you had to be willing to do that with sort of the blind faith that eventually you'll be able to pay yourself, and then you'll be able to put yourself on salary, and you'll be able to get shares at the end of the year. And so I think it was difficult at first. And so now, once you establish that you can garner a certain amount of money, it's like you never want to take less than that. And we're in such a saturated field that it is truly delving through all of these different opportunities and partnerships to find the right one. You know, we had a Fanatics partnership, and we realized, though it was great money, it wasn't necessarily the right thing for us to grow our brand. And so we amicably parted ways.
I was ready to ask you about that, man. That was very interesting, because you had signed early in 2024.
Yeah.
And by the end of 2024, it was over. And I'm like, wait, multi-year agreement is over in a year. What the heck?
Yeah, I mean, like, it was, and you know, I want to say this too about Michael Rubin, still a good friend of mine, has been nothing but great to me individually and also as the podcast. But just from a business standpoint, they saw the podcast world differently than we did. And yes, it was important for us to be able to make money, but we're lucky by having had other careers. It's not all about money, right? It's about how do you scale this and eventually sell it, right? Because that's what this is about. And the other piece for us is, how do we bring other podcasts and other media platforms underneath our umbrella to not only broaden their brand, make them more money, but also make us money off of that. Right. And they didn't necessarily see our vision in the same way that we saw our vision. And when you're dealing with a company as big as Fanatics that are going to have the ask that Fanatics had while building their brand and their company, we weren't able to do ours simultaneously.
What was the trait that you saw that you said, yeah, this probably ain't working? Was it just a difference of creative opinion?
I don't necessarily think it was the difference in creative opinion as it was the difference in how we saw our partnership and how they saw our partnership. We saw our partnership as an arm to continue to build out, whether it was their sports book. We wanted to build out their media platform. For them initially, it was making sure the sports book was represented in the way they wanted to represent it, and they weren't ready to help a podcast, I guess, of our scale continue to grow.
Yeah. Well, when you look at the podcast universe in 2025, right, what do you see? You just said it's an oversaturated market. I got one now, right? I mean, everybody got one. I was walking my dog the other day. I looked at my person. They got one. A microphone set up with the couch and everything. Everybody has a podcast.
It's social media now,
yeah.
though, right? Like, I think that's when we started this business, we were in business with John Shahidi, who's the owner of Happy Dad, owner of Shots Studio. And when we initially started the podcast, he's like, eventually, podcasting will be the next step of social media. And if you think about the way social media has gone, whether it be from MySpace to Facebook to Vine, right, where you can only do 15-second videos, right?
That was fun.
Instagram was like that as well. Then Instagram expanded, and now you've gotten into the longer form. And I think it's about what you want to do the podcast for, right? There is people who want to start it just because they want to talk. They want to be heard. I think that's a good reason to start it. There are people who want to do it because they feel like they can impact a certain demographic. And then there are people who are like, no, I want to do this podcast so I can make money, right? And your priorities, and I always tell my partners this, your priorities will guide your decision making. Like, my priority in podcasting is to make the best possible content I can make. And so my decision making has always gone that way. You know, if your decision making or if your priority is to make money, then there may be things you're willing to do in order to get a dollar that are authentic to yourself. I'm not built that way. And so I think podcasting is a beautiful space, but it's also a space that's giving everyone a microphone, and what they choose to do with it, I think, is all important, because if the space continues to be something that people value, then we could all make money and continue to grow.
Yeah. Well, then you have your bread and butter, right? And before I even go there right fast, if Joe Rogan signed his podcast with $250 million, reportedly $250 million, right? What's Ryan Clark's number? What gets the pivot to jump?
Ooh, I mean, 250 million would do it for sure.
That's a lot.
250 million would do it. I would say this: we are not in a place where we'd want to sell now. I don't. Having had someone have creative, not necessarily control, but input of what we do, that wasn't necessarily something I was comfortable with at that time. But you give me 100 million, we absolutely will do it. Like, that would be a number we do it for. But for me, man, like, and I say this, I have like a real job. And this is a business for me, but it's also a passion. When I get an opportunity to walk through an airport and have aunties and other people of our community tell me I can go to the exact episode that changed me, I can go to the exact episode that saved my life, I can go to the exact episode where I thought, okay, this is somebody who is just like me, who has been through something I've been through, that I can make it too. That is as valuable as the money is to me right now. And if we had to change that to sell, it would be very difficult for me.
Well, then there's the other side of the business, right? You're on that media side. You know, you Google your name, it says Ryan Clark beefing with Cam Newton. Ryan Clark beefing with RG3. Ryan Clark says this about TJ Watt, right?
Y'all don't really be having no beef. I can say this personally, like, me and Cam have no beef. Like, we've been texting about it back and forth. And the RG3 thing is what it is. I refuse to ever be fake. I refuse to lie. There are things about him personally that I dislike, and he knows that, and we've had those conversations. And there are things he's doing publicly, and when he does those things, if it's in the realm of sports still, I'll speak on it. And I think that's just all that we've seen. And it's kind of what, we're in this weird space where sports podcasting has turned more into that, right? People aren't going to tune in to 4th and 1 to hear a true X and O take. If I wanted that, I'd watch NFL Live. They're going to want to know about what's behind the scenes. Let's pull back the curtain, which is why Cam has done such a good job with that show. Hell, you see his studio looks like this, right? Because he's taking you behind the scenes to a more layered conversation that takes you away from the football field while keeping you on it. And I think that's beautiful, but it also does create these spaces where we'll have competing opinions, competing ideas that quote unquote end up as beef. And I am a very clear person. I don't have a lot of gray, black and white. If it's beef, you'll know.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, listen, you go all the way back, right? Take your flashback. You grew up in Louisiana and you kind of developed this, I'm going to speak it like it is type of mentality. When you was in grade school, your mom and dad used to get calls. Do you know what Ryan said in class today?
My conduct grades were not great. They were not great.
It comes from you from a young age, man. But again, growing up in Louisiana, about 10 minutes outside of New Orleans, right? What was that like for you?
It was beautiful. I'm so proud of where I'm from. I'm so proud of the people that raised me, that sacrificed for me. There was such a beautiful blend of it. Like when you grow up in South Louisiana, like racism is actually a thing. And what it helped allow me to see is the beauty in people who care no matter your color, no matter your ethnicity, no matter your gender. The coaches I had, the Tim Whitmers, the CJ Gibsons, the Coach Dickies, the Hank Tierneys, the Darren Leshes, right? Like these men who truly looked at me, saw value in me, and took care of me like I was one of their own. My high school coach, to this day, we still text message. We still have conversations about young men that he could see things in the way he saw things in me, and how can me and him work together to help them. And a lot of these young men look like me. Mm-hmm. And so I think there's such a beauty of being in a place that is diverse, but yet has its adversity. And, I have a documentary that's coming out about Katrina and 20 years, the 20-year anniversary, and just having different conversations with people who were in that city and in our city in 2005, people who were in the Superdome, people who lived on the bridge. You talk about a group of individuals that understand perseverance, that are so tough and hardened by the life and experiences they have, but yet still so loving and welcoming. Like that's what it was for me growing up. And it does make you tough in some ways. I don't take a lot of crap, but I'm working on being a little gentler and kinder.
Yeah, I must be the girl dad in you, right? Because I'm a girl dad too, man. And when you're a girl dad,
they get everything, bro.
Yeah.
my wife legitimately calls me a sucker once a day.
Yeah.
Because my daughter asked him for something, and then she got to communicate that she said no first.
Yes.
Right? And then my daughter would come to me and ask, I'd be like, absolutely, babe, take whatever you want. I told my youngest, I was like, look, you don't really ever have to move. And my wife was like, yes, she does. Yeah. So we'll figure it out, though.
Yeah, but listen, as you were coming up, though, you wanted to be a teacher before you went into football.
I wanted to be a principal.
And it has something to do because of your brother.
Yeah.
You still have that passion, maybe to pursue teaching?
Yeah, I don't think I'm gonna teach now. But like that was just always something. Like he struggled learning.
Yeah.
And he would go to this speech therapist, and it's different because I never had those things. I never had those issues, and I was sort of praised, applauded, and rewarded for not. And it felt to me like he was looked at differently because of who his brother was and because of some of the struggles that he had. And so even when I started college, my initial major was speech, because I was like, if I could become a speech pathologist, or if I could in some way help kids who went through what my brother went through, it would be an opportunity to make sure the next kid who dealt with what he dealt with wasn't looked at the same way.
Yeah. As you're going through, because you go to LSU, right? Nick Saban was your coach back then, but as you're walking through campus, you're one of the favorites. All the reporters are coming up to you. They're getting all of the information because of your personality. Like, when I covered the NBA, we had a rule. Like, if you were writing a story and you needed that quote, we knew who to go to. You can go to Doc Rivers. He was going to take you home. And here you are at LSU. You're the man, right? Everybody's coming to you to do the interviews. But what's your self-talk when you're on campus and you're in that life of LSU as one of the main guys on Nick Saban's squad?
Don't do nothing stupid. It was, it's an honor to have played for him. But Mike Barnett, who's actually the sports information director there, was, once I left school and I realized I wasn't going to teach, that was another job I looked at that I'd want to do. What I remember was he would always come get me after we lost. I didn't get to talk after every win, but he'd always get me after we lost. And in that 3 to 5 minute walk, he would tell me, this is what they're going to ask you. Here's how you should answer. Here is what's going on. How do you feel about this? How do you feel about that? And then walking away, we'd always recap it. And that was sort of the start to what has become my career. And I just think that you learn a lot in losing, and you learn a lot in communicating as a winner, even though the scoreboard didn't say you were.
Yeah. Now, when you find yourself back on, because again, you go undrafted in 2002, didn't hear your name called, but then you do get a call from the Giants. You know, spend the season 2 there, get cut again in 2004, right? And you find yourself back at LSU as a fundraiser, right? Here you are on campus, you're a fundraiser.
I had a cool job though.
Yeah, right? You're suit and tie, a fundraiser.
Yeah, like it was a cool job. Like my outfits, I look back at my outfits, they weren't great because I also wanted comfort because I'd be walking around campus a lot. So I wore sneakers with my suits, but it wasn't like the cool sneakers. It was literally like I'm about to walk up this hill all day. No, I thought it was one of those things though that I'm grateful for because we all say as men, I'll do anything to take care of my family.
Right.
And don't get me wrong, bro. I wasn't laying bricks. I wasn't breaking up concrete. It wasn't contracting, right? But I lived in New Orleans still and worked in Baton Rouge. So I would leave the house at like 5:30. I'd drive to Baton Rouge, I'd work, and then after work, I'd get a workout in because I was still trying to play. I'd drive home, I'd shower, eat, play with the kids for a little bit, then just go right to sleep so I could be back up again. And I remember being on the phone with my wife and we had just bought a house. I was like, well, we got to sell the house and then maybe we can get an apartment. And if we get an apartment, you know, you can see if you can move your job here as you finish school. And we were doing all of these things and I was so willing to do it. I wasn't sad that I wasn't playing anymore. I didn't have some grudge. I wasn't upset. It was just one of these things like this is the next step in life for me. And God had given me 2 years to have a bank account with the savings that I never thought I'd have. And so it was.
What was your self-talk at that time? You know, when you're going through it, one hand you're trying to say, okay, this is over. And then the other hand, you still got that urge to play.
I was grateful. At the time I was reading this book called Power of a Praying Husband. And it was a Tuesday night. On Tuesday night, I was like, okay, so I said the prayer. I was like, okay, Lord, I know I am telling everybody I'm okay. I'm acting as if I'm okay. I feel like I'm okay. I was like, but I would love another opportunity. And the next day I went to Will Muschamp's office, defense coordinator, to apply to be a grad assistant. I was like, okay, what do I have to do that? Because I was like, I can at least get into coaching. Because I didn't know if I wanted to fundraise my entire life. And walking back from that, my phone rang. And my agent told me I had a tryout. I go to the trial with Washington. They don't pick me. Some dude ran a 4.4 flat or something. And I was like, bro, how are you so fast coming from your house? And so my agent finally, I'm in the airport. My agent gets me on the phone. He's like, are you boarded your plane yet? And I was like, no, why? He's like, well, they've been trying to call you. I guess my phone wasn't going through. The guy fails his physical. And after failing his physical, so I get to go, I study the playbook. The first day of practice, man, the first session, I almost pass out. At this time, I don't understand how my sickle cell trait actually affected me. And the coach comes up to me who got me to try out there and he goes, hey, look, you got to do something in this second practice. They're already talking about replacing you. And the next practice, I get 2 picks. And in the first cuts, my name was the last one to scroll on the bottom of the screen. I didn't get a call, any of those things. And I remember I was on the phone. I told my wife that. She's upset because she felt like it's unprofessional that they didn't tell me before this. I got on my knees and I just thank God that I had the opportunity. I was like, that's all I ask you for. And you gave it to me. And if it's not for me, it's not for me. Man, next day I walk in, Greg Williams calls me to his office and he tells me, he said, you're not cut. And not only are you not cut, if we were picking the team today, you'd make it. And it just let me know, man, that like all that gratitude in the way I was living, in the way I was praying, in the way I was receiving these opportunities truly came in the reward of that being shown enough that God did give me the desires of my heart.
Love it, man. Power of gratitude, because then you go on, obviously, prove yourself in Washington and become a Steelers great. Won a Super Bowl in 2009, right? Retired as a Steeler in 2015. So if you had to describe your career in one word, what would it be?
Oh, it'd be blessed.
Blessed.
For sure. It would also be uncommon, right? Like I didn't expect to have the career I'd had. You know, it also changed for me every year. right? Like every year was another step forward. Every year was another ascension. Every year was another level that I wasn't expecting, but also that God never gave me too quickly. You know, when I became a starter in Washington, next year I hurt myself in camp. So that was a step back. So I had to rebuild myself from that. When I got into free agency, I'm telling them, like, I'm not going to make this hard for you. I want to be in Washington. They made Adam Archuleta the highest paid safety in NFL history. And they told me, yeah, we still want you here. You're just going to have to play for league minimum. And so there were all of these things that could have been setbacks or could have been adversity, but because of how I got in, I just counted it all joy. I was like, they still letting me do what I've been doing for free since I was 4 or 5 years old. And so I think when you look back at it, I'm proud of what I've accomplished. It's also why, like, I don't get into like football arguments with people. I meet like young cats and they're like, man, I'll burn you. I'm like, probably. You know what I'm saying? Or they're like, man, I'll run you over. I'm like, probably. It was like, I'm old. You know, because I had my time, and there's never been a day since I retired that I've missed football.
Yeah, and when you look now, man, your son Jordan played for the Jets, starting his career in New York, just like Dad, right? I mean, what do you tell him about how to navigate the NFL in 2025, where you got the social media?
It's way different.
Yeah,
it's way different. He's also a much different young man than I was, which is super cool. He's so much more mature in many ways. He's also more of a warrior than I was. You know, like I remember my mom brought me to the airport. My parents brought me. This was back in the day when they could kind of walk closer. And my mom just hugged me and she was like, go get a job. And like I never thought of anything else. Like I never thought I wasn't, you know. He's a little bit more of a thinker. And so I allow him to reach out to me when he needs me. Every day I check in on him. Hey man, how you doing? He's like, some days he's like, Pop, today was smooth. Pop, it was a great day. And you know, throughout his college career, he'll tell me too, Pop, you know what, it wasn't a good day, Pop. I'm doing my best to unpack it and move on from it. I don't really want to talk about it. That's perfectly fine for me. But like, I'm still his trainer. My son has never had another DB trainer his entire life. And whenever people come train with us, they're always like, man, he's so good at this, he's so good at that. I was like, he's never learned a wrong thing or anything different. And I trust that he's going to do those things. I trust that he's going to be a consummate professional. And I'm just proud, like for him to have watched him work from the day he broke his ankle his freshman year, where he cried and he told me, he was like, Dad, this is going to mess up everything for football. He's like, I'm not going to get a scholarship. I'm not going to get to do the things I want to do. And to see that he's been able to accomplish that is a testament to his work, to his sacrifice, to his steadfastness in what his dreams are.
Yeah. Most definitely, man. Well, look, back into your portfolio, because you mentioned training, right? So you got the training camps, right? Or you got the training facilities that you're working on. What else are you interested in, man? Any other startups, AI startups, right? Artificial intelligence?
So actually right now, I'm in conversation with this company, and what we want to develop is, and we've already started working with military veterans. One of my future partners or prospective partners, his brother killed himself, completed suicide after returning home from the military. Another one of my partners is a former football player who ended his career and retired early because of concussion symptoms. And so they've developed basically a program that's to allow military veterans and former football players to better navigate some of the symptoms of CTE. And we're working right now on our first brick and mortar building, or releasing it, and we're building it out.
Where is it at?
It's going to be in Miami.
Miami.
Yeah, and what we want to do, we don't get to examine a brain and know how much CTE has ravished an individual until they passed.
Yeah.
Right? And so it's, how do we give you a better quality of life? And one of the things that got me into it was having a conversation with them, and they were talking to the officers who police sex trafficking. And one of the big things they did with them was emotional counseling, because of the things you see, because of the things you learn, because of the situations that you're put in. And to me, that was extremely powerful, because when you look at what they do, who they service, and how much it means, yet nobody thinks of the impact of doing that thing. And so that's what I'm working on now. They sent over the portfolio. I'm talking to my people about it. in investing and becoming also an ambassador for it and a front man, because I believe it's something that can be extremely helpful. And obviously, my financial people ain't gonna get involved in it if it won't be extremely profitable as well.
Yeah, most definitely. How about any crypto? You believer in that?
So, I'm not. Right?
They're gonna get you, man.
Right? So I'm not, and I will say this though, I'm comfortable with saying it's a lack of understanding.
Okay.
And it being a lack of understanding, I wasn't hard pressed enough as it comes to making money, where I dove into it or allowed people to speak to me in a way to where I could understand it, because it was never really an interest of mine.
Yeah, but you do want to learn more about it.
Yes, I do want to learn more about it, because I want to have
Gotcha.
education. I want to have the education to be able to have conversations about it in a way where I'm not only learning, but I can ask the questions that allow me to be educated as well.
Yeah, most definitely. You got to learn more about it. I mean, it's coming, man. I went into a store the other day and I see this Bitcoin ATM and I'm like, Jesus, man, like it's just rolled out.
Well, I don't know if you saw Odell Beckham, you know, as Bitcoin continues to grow in value, Odell Beckham Jr. was talking about his contract, which had Bitcoin as a piece of it.
Yeah.
Right, and so you're seeing in these different places, as you're paying attention to the changes in the world, that some of these things that seemed trendy initially are starting to pay dividends.
Yeah. Last thing, I get you out of here, man. Get some fun questions as we get, but you had to name your business empire, right? When it's all said and done and you're looking to just pass it on to your kids in one word, what is Ryan Clark's business empire in one word? Coco Golf, she said timeless. Right?
Yeah, I don't know if it's timeless. Necessary.
Necessary. Why necessary?
Because I feel like I've done the necessary things to have the next generation of my family, of Clarks, to be put in a better position than I was. But I also know that my parents did the exact same thing. It wasn't necessarily the things that they could leave me or will me or the businesses that I was taught to run before they leave. It was, hey, we're going to sow into and invest into your education. You know, like I heard my mom on the phone with the lady that collected, you know, our high school tuition, saying what week she could pay what and what check she could cash to be able to pay this. Like that was their investment into me. And so now building a bigger portfolio and also helping my children, which is what I'm doing. My daughter just finished culinary school. We're investing into her first travel, right? She's gonna have like a travel party bus, party van, we're calling it. And then she wants to eventually get a storefront. That's part of something I want to do, right? My son went to Notre Dame. He was able to meet these different investors that deal in real estate. I'm going to invest in him and with him so he can also build his own portfolio. And I think that's something that if my parents don't do what they did for me, I can't move forward and do for them.
Yeah, necessary. Love it, man. $1 million question, right, as we get you out of here. I think I know how you made your first million. I think so, right? Maybe playing football, maybe something like that.
Yeah.
How did you spend it?
I didn't make any big purchases.
Wow.
Like, I want to say my first car after I made my first million was an Avalanche. You remember the Avalanche?
Yeah, I do.
The kind of like
Chevy,
truck. Yeah, it was like 30,000, and I was fired up about it. That was my first car. After that, I did eventually. So what we did was we bought a townhouse. And that townhouse, when we were able to get more money and buy, you know, our own house, became our first investment property.
Nice. Do you still have it?
I just sold it. I sold it a few years back. Yeah, and so like that was kind of what opened me up to it, because it felt like, this might be silly, it felt like less of a risk because I already had it.
Right.
It was already mine.
Yeah.
And so it didn't feel like I had to go scout, find the best place to buy, see where the best rates were, because it was already mine, and it was now finding a management firm to do it. And from that management firm, we were able to move in to do different things in Loudoun County.
Yeah, love it. Outlook stuff, man. You look at the NFLPA, going through some issues, right? You got some leadership changes. You were part of that union once upon a time in your life. When you see what's going on in the NFLPA, what do you see?
I see dysfunction.
Dysfunction, yeah.
You know, DeMaurice Smith was the director when I was on the executive board. We had a very open relationship. We had an honest relationship. You know, some of those conversations should not be heard by children.
Yeah.
But when we walked out of the room, we walked out as a united front, but we walked out as a group of individuals who were respected not only for the way that they conducted business, but for the way that they conducted their lives. That's not how you look at the NFLPA right now. You don't look at them as a business that should be representative of the thousands of NFL players who are in the league. Don Davis, who has been, you know, a long time NFL player advocate for the PA, I believe that he should be the next guy to step in the interim. He has run for president before. He was part of the last group of individuals who campaigned, and I think he's always had the best interest of the player. He is a former player, and I believe his extensive time in the PA is kind of like the steadying force they need until they can move forward and find somebody for the permanent job.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I always say that they should have more former players involved with the PA.
Gene Upshaw was the absolute best,
Yeah.
right? I think Gene Upshaw, there was a time of cohesiveness between the NFL and the NFLPA, but there was still enough of him to know I want to protect the players while I'm protecting the game as well. We need to get back to somebody that sees football in that manner.
Yeah, most definitely, man. You look around the world, right? What country does Ryan Clark invest in today? Why? Outside of the U.S.?
Whoa, honestly, and it's probably going to be crazy, but when you look at all the things that are going on in Dubai, right? Also, I say that because they've gotten heavy into sports, whether it's boxing, UFC, obviously soccer has always been a huge thing.
NBA
there. NBA, you know, I think the way that they see using what America has already made popular, wanting America's voices to be involved, along with a business structure, a business model, and an infrastructure, not only in the way their architecture is set up, but the way that they can push and fund all of these sports, all of these new ventures in a way that we can't even do it right now. If you could get, I think if you can be a part of what they're doing, as we see Dana White is right now as well, I think that's kind of in the forefront, and being on the forefront of that is a way to make a ton of money.
First flying car is expected to be tested in Dubai in 2026, and so
I'm not getting a flying car, bro.
I mean, listen,
they definitely didn't test that on black people.
We was gonna get in cars that talk back to us either. Here we
are. I don't like them either. I got I drive a 2015 Toyota Tundra.
No, you don't, Ryan Clark.
Yeah,
Tundra?
I take my key and I gotta stick my key in there and I gotta turn it like normal people.
Wow.
My car don't talk to me ever.
Yeah, because it don't start up.
We never have, it starts, and I actually have cotton seats. I don't even have leather seats.
Come on, man. You're getting too much money for all of this, man.
No, I'm not, bro. You know how much my car is parked at the airport?
Pretty so.
Yeah.
Come on, man. You got to upgrade, though, man. Come
on. What you drive?
A Genesis.
See, that's a nice car. What year, though?
It's 2016, 2017. Yeah.
Your car almost old as mine.
I know, but my car talked to me though.
What kind of key you got?
It's not a key. The little
Dang, you got a little fob?
Yeah, it's with the little button, man.
I got a regular key.
Yeah, it's a key that comes in it, but you got to take it out. That's the little. Man, you get me talking about my car. Somebody gonna steal it, man. But
nobody gonna steal my car. I can talk about mine.
They're gonna look and say, "Oh, what is that? Is that a Tundra?"
They're gonna leave mine alone. Another reason to have a Tundra.
Yeah, so people leave it alone, man. I'll get you out of here, man. On Good to Great. I think you are one of the best to answer this question. What's the difference between a good NFL safety and a great one?
What you said earlier when you asked me about risk. The great ones take calculated risk. I guess a quick story I can give you, I think I was a good safety. Troy Polamalu was obviously one of the greatest safeties to ever play the game. We were in the same coverage on each side of the field, and both of us knew exactly what the route was. And my job wouldn't allow me to make the play where the route was, but I could tell somebody else to make it and I can cover their back. Troy's job wouldn't let him do it either, but he still went to get it. Because he said, if I know what the play is, if I know there's a play to be made, I want to go get it. I want it to be me. And my thing was, hey, I don't want to go get it because what if something else happens? and then I let my team down. And I think it's kind of what you say, the solid, steady thing versus I believe it, I know it, I've anticipated, now why not me? And I think that's the difference, man. You look at the Ed Reeds, the Brian Dawkins, Rod Woodson when he played, Charles Woodson when he moved to safety, Ronnie Lott. All of them trusted their instincts 100% and at all times.
Sean Teller trusted his instinct.
Oh,
man.
he was. Yeah. I tell people all the time, he's the most gifted human I've ever been around.
Sean, you know what's so funny, man? I used to watch Sean Teller. I forgot you was on Washington because when I was a Cowboys fan, I'm looking like, man, where's Sean Teller on the field? Because he's gonna pop somebody.
Bro, he could absolutely do everything, man. He was playing like in one-on-ones, right? When you're a safety, you try to find your win, right? So I'm looking like, who's the third tight end? I'm gonna go lock him down. Mm-hmm. He would go out there with the wide receivers, and he was covering David Patton, who could flat out fly. David Patton runs a post route. David was a little man, and Sean was a very big man. Sean catches him, and he slides his hands past David's ears and puts his hands in front of David's face mask. So David's trying to catch the ball like this. He catches the ball over in front of his face mask, pulls it back over his head, and starts running the other way. Crowd goes crazy because they had never seen a man at 6'2", 230 pounds, run like that, track the ball like that, be so graceful yet so powerful at one time. He's obviously one of my best friends in the world, and I miss him dearly, but I think it makes me sad we never got to see him grow into what he was growing into.
To be one of the greats, man, because he was definitely headed that way.
Man.
Yeah, man. Ryan Clark, man, thank you so much for the time,
you, brother.
man. Absolutely. Go and charge that Tundra. It's at the airport right now.
You don't charge the Tundra. It runs on.
Well, no, I'm saying charge because the battery's dead, and so you got to charge it back up.
Bro, I just bought a new battery. Somebody told you that?
Oh, no. Well, there you go.
My battery was really dead.
That's because you got the Tundra there. That's what
man, it had just been a long time, and I needed a new one.
Ryan Clark here at the Nasdaq. You've been watching Enterprise Zone. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. On hiatus until Black Business Month. See you back then.